told it's going there all the time. That naturally speeds up the work a great deal. We can hear this continual telephoning in our telephones down here as a humming and singing. You must have heard it too. Now this humming and singing transmitted by our telephones is the only real and reliable thing you'll hear. Everything else is deceptive. There's no fixed connection with the castle, no central exchange which transmits our calls further. When anybody calls up the castle from here, the instruments in all the subordinate departments ring. Or rather, they would all ring if practically all the departments, I know it for a certainty, didn't leave their receivers off. Now and then, however, a fatigued official may feel the need of a little distraction, especially in the evenings and at night, and may hang the receiver on. Then we get an answer. But an answer, of course, that's merely a practical joke, and that's very understandable too. For who would take the responsibility of interrupting in the middle of the night the extremely important work up there that goes on furiously the whole time with a message about his own little private troubles? I can't comprehend how even a stranger can imagine that when he calls up Sordini, for example, it's really Sordini that answers. Far more probably, it's a little copying clerk from an entirely different department. On the other hand, it may certainly happen once in a blue moon that when one calls up the little copying clerk, Sordini will answer himself. Then finally, the best thing is to fly from the telephone before the first sound comes through. I didn't know it was like that, certainly, said Kay. I couldn't know of all these peculiarities. But I didn't put much confidence in those telephone conversations, and I was always aware that the only things of real importance were those that happened in the castle itself. No, said the superintendent, holding firmly on the word. These telephones replies certainly have meaning. Why shouldn't they? How could a message given by an official from the castle be unimportant? As I remarked before, apropos Clam's letter, all these utterances have no official significance. When you attach official significance to them, you go astray. On the other hand, their private significance in a friendly or hostile sense is very great, generally greater than an official communication could ever have. Good, said Kay. Granted that all this is so, I should have lots of good friends in the castle. Looked at rightly, the sudden inspiration of that department all these years ago, saying that a land surveyor should be asked to come, was an act of friendship towards myself. But then, in the sequel, one act was followed by another, until at last, on an evil day, I was enticed here and then threatened with being thrown out again. There's a certain amount of truth in your view of the case, said the superintendent. You're right in thinking that the pronouncements of the castle are not to be taken literally. But caution is always necessary. not only here, and always the more necessary, the more important the pronouncement in question happens to be. But when you went on to talk about being enticed, I ceased to fathom you. If you had followed my explanation more carefully, then you must have seen that the question of your being summoned here is far too difficult to be settled here and now in the course of a short conversation. So, the only remaining conclusion, said Kay, is that everything is very uncertain and insoluble, including my being thrown out. Who would take the risk of throwing you out, Land Surveyor? Asked the Superintendent. The very uncertainty about your summons guarantees you the most courteous treatment. Only you're too sensitive by all appearances. Nobody keeps you here, but that surely doesn't amount to throwing you out. Oh, Superintendent, said Kay. Now again, you're taking far too simple a view of the case. I'll enumerate for your benefit a few of the things that keep me here. The sacrifice I made in leaving my home, the long and difficult journey, the well-grounded hopes I built on my engagement here, my complete lack of means, the impossibility after this of finding some other suitable job at home, and last but not least, my fiancé who lives here. Oh, Frida, said the Superintendent, without showing any surprise. I know, but Frida would follow you anywhere. As for the rest of what you said, some consideration will be necessary, and I'll communicate with the castle about it. If a decision should come to, or if it should be necessary first to interrogate you again, I'll send for you. Is that agreeable to you? No, absolutely, said Kay. I don't want any act of favour from the castle, but my rights. Mizzy, said the Superintendent to his wife, who still sat pressed against him and, lost in a daydream, was playing with Clam's letter, which he had folded into the shape of a little boat. Kay snatched it from her in alarm. Mizzy, my foot is beginning to throb again. We must renew the compress. Kay got up. Then I'll take my leave, he said. Said Missy, who was already preparing a poultice. The last one was drawing too strongly. Kay turned away. At his last words, the assistants, with their usual misplaced zeal to be useful, had thrown open both wings of the door. To protect the sick room from the strong draught of cold air which was rushing in, Kay had to be content with making the Superintendent a hasty bow. Then pushing the assistants in front of him, he rushed out of the room and quickly closed the door.